And today we're going to explore a little more about the fact that April is considered National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say it's not the most light and friendly topic, but I think the good work that's being done by the Children's Advocacy Centers of Mississippi, as well as through the Department of Child Protection Services, is definitely a good thing. And so that's what we want to focus on today. So joining me in studio is Miss Equiller Mahone. She is the Assistant Executive Director of Children's Advocacy Centers of Mississippi. And we have Andrea Sanders on the phone. She's the Commissioner of the Mississippi Department of Child Protection Services. So welcome, ladies.
Good afternoon. Happy to be here.
Hey, Andrea.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I know this is a marathon of a month for you guys, just raising awareness to the work you're doing all year long. So, Andrea, I'll kick it off with you. Just kind of explain what National Child Abuse Prevention Month is all about.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. National Child Abuse Prevention Month is an opportunity to raise awareness with the public, not only about the prevalence of abuse, but about our opportunities as a state, as a community, to intervene early when we see warning signs and take steps to prevent child abuse from happening, which is certainly less traumatic to children and much less costly to state government.
Now, Equiller, you guys there at the Child Advocacy Centers, y'all do great work, but I think sometimes it flies under the radar, which I guess sometimes can be a good thing. And I often like to refer to you as, sort of the guardian angel, or, the one that's just sort of there to help those that need it most, guide them through the process. But how would you best explain what you do at the Children's Advocacy Centers, or what the centers do for the families?
So, like you said, a lot of people are unaware of what's happening simply because they haven't had those experiences. So their first interactions, unfortunately, are if they had a child who's experienced some form of abuse. And so for our child advocacy centers, what we often refer to them as a one-stop shop. That child is not having to go to various agencies to tell their story multiple times. So at the Child Advocacy Center, they are meeting with trained professionals who can help them through this process. So they have a forensic interview to talk about those allegations. They have the family advocates there who are looking for resources for that family. Not only is the child impacted, but that entire family unit is impacted by this abuse. And then you have the mental health professionals. This is a very traumatic experience for that child, and we want to make sure they're healthy and happy despite what has happened to them. And then you have law enforcement who's coming in, CPS, and also prosecution if it goes that far. So you have all of these entities working together and invested in the best interest of this child.
Well, and I always think of it, it's like, man, when an allegation, because at first it's always an allegation that gets hit with a family, your world starts to spin. And then the parents or the guardian or whomever it may be of that child, and they may be the perpetrator, who knows, gets hit with all this paperwork and appointments and all of that. And to me, my heart just starts racing, sort of thinking about it. So you guys sort of help take the steering wheel, maybe a better example than your fairy godmother, and just help direct families and keep that child safely protected from I guess, any more trauma from the experience.
Yes, absolutely. And dealing with law enforcement can be intimidating for many people. So you have those fears, and you're also thinking about something has happened to my child, like, oh my gosh. And so all of this is overwhelming. It's very stressful. And so the Child Advocacy Center staff is there to help guide them and to provide those needed resources and to just reassure them that they're going to get through this process.
You mentioned law enforcement can be intimidating, and Andrea, I feel like CPS in it also can have sort of that intimidation sort of feel. I mean, the moment it's like the worst ding of being a parent is if you feel like you're being investigated by CPS or someone called CPS on you or a loved one or whatever it may be. Can you help us understand here on Good Things, maybe what does CPS do on a daily basis? Because I don't think you're out there just trying to snatch kids away from their families, which some people may instantly sort of think about whether they realize it or not, but that's their first opinion of CPS.
Well, and that's one of the hurdles that we have to overcome in terms of engaging the public. However, one of our duties is that when there is an allegation of abuse, we are bound by statute to go and investigate. And, the theory is that the public sees things that are disturbing, but they really, they're not in a position, we don't want them deciding whether or not something's wrong in the home. That's a really difficult decision to make. So that is part of our role. And so regardless of how well we work to improve our image with the public, that reality always makes it a little bit difficult to engage families. And we have some strategies that we're employing to try to separate those functions, the investigations function from, and make that the job of one person, where a different person would come in and try to engage the family and work with them to provide services and see if there is an opportunity for reunification, or work through the children's advocacy centers and help determine whether or not we need to move to a different type of permanency for the child. But yes, that is we are a little bit like law enforcement in some instances, because we are the investigative authority in alleged child abuse.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, Andrea, because I know there are systems in place with schools, daycare settings, other institutions where kids sort of reside or play, that are there to train teachers and staff and faculty maybe to catch warning signs or some of the red flags that then, because CPS isn't out patrolling like in vehicles looking for it. I mean, they have their boots on the ground and their eyes and ears, which also falls into our responsibility as just everyday citizens to kind of also be out there on the alert. So what are some of those trainings that at least our teachers and our daycare staff and anyone who, like church staff and too, that have facilities on campus that have children, to know what warning signs to look for and then when not to throw like a parent into the fray of CPS?
Well, I think that one of the important things is that we are a mandatory reporting state. And so, like I said, we're not asking teachers and people who interact with children every day to make that final determination. But some of the warning signs that we want them to look out for are, when a child shows up, obviously, with bruises or injuries that, they happen a little too often or seem a little too severe for the explanation, or if the explanation's not very congruent, children who are withdrawn or their behavior suddenly changes. Often, you'll see a child wearing inappropriate clothing in the summer. This is a really warm state. And so if a child's wearing a hoodie with the sleeves pulled down through the summer, just asking them, it's a combination of factors like that might cause the teacher to have concern, and then make the referral. And our job is to, we do screen out a number of referrals that come in because they don't rise to the level that statutory invokes our investigative powers. But the important part is those of us who work with children, you also kind of have this internal alarm, and when something just isn't adding up and it doesn't seem right. That's what we're there for, and it's a good time to call the hotline.
Well, and I think, too, any parent or grandparent or guardian listening to Good Things deep down know that is the right thing to do, is to sort of, listen to those internal cues, know when you think that something doesn't feel right, and then at least hearing and being reaffirmed today here that, not every allegation, rises to that level, and not everyone gets their kids taken away. And I think that's part of the stigma we're trying to break down today, by also raising awareness that, sadly so, as the Child Advocacy Center see, it's still out there in terms of child abuse, and that's why April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So we're doing our best to put out some prevention awareness, and we're going to keep talking about that, and maybe a windy day at the Capitol coming up next.